We decided. Hi, this
Hi,
is Sylvie Rainaldi
Karina
and
Tipton,
Karina Tipton and
working title Town Hall Tailgate.
Town Hall Tailgate. Okay.
Okay.
We are here. It is April 26th, and we are outside the town hall after a planning board meeting that just concluded.
Mhm.
So we're gonna give you the update on that. We did not set a timer.
Oh, I'm checking my clock right now.
Okay.
Okay.
We really want to keep this to 10 minutes, and we think we're gonna do it today.
Yeah, 9:46. Let's go.
All right, 9:56, and then we'll be.
Okay.
We're gonna go home and go to bed.
Me too.
Okay. So a couple things on the agenda today. No new topics. These were all existing projects that have been, and actually all public hearings.
I think that's really notable. I think that says a lot about how many applicants have come in a short period of time, and they're all stacked up with these public hearings.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So let's talk about. We'll go through in the order. The first one is called Autumn Sky, which we had a discussion because I wanted to know where this name came from, and I was advised that the applicant actually gets to decide the name of the projects. It is not necessarily indication of what is the project. They just get to pick a code word.
Yes. Like, for example, this is not an autumn sky. This is a one bay, 20,000 square foot spec warehouse.
Right, that doesn't scream autumn sky to me.
No, no crimson colors. No, yeah,
No.
no.
So just this is going to be on the proposed for the corner of Paul's Lane and 208, which is on 208 headed from Scott's Quarters towards Walden, past Bailey Road. I think it's on the left. And one of the questions that came up in the meeting, I think is very fair, is how is this a warehouse being proposed when there's a moratorium on warehouses? I think this is a good question. And the answer is that it is below the square footage threshold for the moratorium. So these smaller warehouses can continue to be processed by the planning board.
Yes, right.
It is a spec warehouse, which means that there is currently no tenant that they are announcing prior to this.
Right.
All right, let's talk about the big one.
Yeah, Mirabito public hearing. This was the first public hearing meeting for Mirabito, I believe.
Yeah.
There's a huge number of people. The room was filled. It's limited capacity still. Only 25 people are allowed in the room.
Yeah.
And every chair was taken, which was pretty amazing. Yeah.
So this is the 30,000 gallon propane storage unit that is being proposed for Beaver Dam Road, which right next to 84, on the opposite side from where the Malley farm is. So as you're coming out towards Neelytown and you go under 84, it would be on the right. And the company is proposing one 30,000 gallon tank, and then as far as truck delivery goes, one larger truck every couple of weeks at 45 tons, and smaller trucks daily at 16.5 tons each. The reason we covered this specifically, this is the question that I asked, is because there is a 10-ton weight limit on the road, and the trucks that are being proposed that would be delivering and picking up propane from this tank are over that weight limit. But this was a really big showing for the town of Montgomery. We had 10 people speak against
Mhm.
this propane storage. I wrote them down, how many, and actually it's 12. The last two were children. A 9-year-old, 5-year-old, 12.
Around that. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not sure. Yeah.
And they really spoke to the safety of that road, and the character of Beaver Dam Road is a residential road, and they ride their bikes, they ride their horses, and they spoke up, and I was just really proud of them for taking a stand in what they believed in.
Yeah. Yeah, I talked to them beforehand, and I was remembering how nervous I was the first few times I spoke in front of the planning board. Honestly, I'm still a little nervous when I speak in front of, I don't want to screw up what I'm saying. I want to sound smart. Um, but they did a really phenomenal job, and they spoke from their heart,
Yeah.
and they talked about what mattered to them. Yeah.
A couple of questions that came up during this public hearing. This was a long conversation that the planning board had with the applicant. The first was related to fire suppression, which I think was some really good questions.
Mm-hmm.
So the question that was raised is whether there would be a well on site for on-site fire suppression, and the answer from the applicant was that there would not be a well that they would have, and that water would have to be brought in if there was a fire. They said that this was not required of their proposal. I don't know if that's true or not. That's just what they said.
They referred a couple of times to New York state laws that were not sound like they're more lenient than they were 30 years ago when another propane tank storage came in front of the planning board for the same location. But the thing that I don't understand about that is that New York State is a home rule state, which basically means that each level down from state government, just the same as with the federal government, you can have a more restrictive law as you go down in level. So the town could have a more restrictive requirement on a development if they chose to. And I feel like we might in some cases. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I mean, it would make sense if the town wanted to evaluate our capacity for fighting fires, like how many pumping trucks there are in the combined fire departments locally. I know there's a lot of mutual aid that happens. We're all volunteer fire departments around here. There's only like 3 or 4 paid fire departments in Orange County, and it's all volunteer around here. So, I mean, it would make sense that you would want to make sure that if there's no on-site fire suppression, you're equipped to handle an emergency.
And like you mentioned, back in the late 80s, there was a propane tank proposal across the street from where this one's currently being proposed, and that was a huge discussion. We actually pulled and read the minutes from meetings that happened in the late 80s, and the residents and the planning board had a lot of questions back then about fire suppression, and at that time, they were planning on putting wells in across the street.
Yeah.
But that is not the case now. The other things I just learned about this company, because we did want to know, people were asking why here in this location, and from what we could tell, this company said that their closest propane filling station is in Roscoe, New York, which is out past Livingston Manor. So the truck drivers are kind of coming quite a ways, and I believe, based on the numbers he was saying, is that they don't really have a lot of customers in this area for propane. They have other services in this
Right.
area, but this would be like an expansion of their services.
Yeah, somebody did ask how many customers there were in Montgomery, and he couldn't speak to that. So hopefully when he comes back, he'll be able to explain exactly how many people in the town of Montgomery would benefit from having this filling station so close, this distribution station so close. Yeah.
And then the other question that we were asking is related to the truck weight. And I mentioned this earlier, is that their trucks are over the weight limit. So we asked the applicant how, and even asked the planning board, who gets to decide whether a company gets to build infrastructure that's going to have trucks over the weight limit. And I just didn't feel like I got a very clear answer. They mentioned a permit that they have to run, that trucks can drive over the weight limit on roads when they're doing deliveries, which makes a lot of sense to me, right? If you live anywhere and you have a propane truck coming to your house, perhaps it's going to be over the weight limit for your town or your town road, but to build your propane tank on a local road just wasn't quite clear to me.
Yeah, I agreed with that. And that's something that I'm certainly interested in researching more because I feel like if you're citing your business, you should be citing your business in a location where there's infrastructure to support your business. And this waiver sounds like it's just for occasional use, right? Like you would get a propane delivery once, twice a year, depending on how cold it is.
Right.
Like we used to have propane in our backyard and it was an infrequent delivery. So it would make sense that a really heavy truck could go infrequently on a residential road that had a weight limit. But they're talking about trucks every single day coming and going, at least one truck a day, he said.
Right.
Yeah. So if they're actually, we could probably do the math. If they're talking about the large truck filling up the propane tank twice a month, they're gonna be bringing in about 20,000 gallons of propane. I haven't had dinner yet. Propane every month, and then the little trucks are almost 3,000 gallons.
Right.
So you're talking about 7 of those little trucks at least every month, right? Did I do that math right?
Yeah.
At a minimum.
And
And
what
he
I
said,
got of this is based on what their current customers are. But the whole
right,
point
the
is that
point
they
is
want
to
to grow
expand.
customers.
Right.
They're not putting in their propane storage here to just service the customers that they have. So
Yeah.
I just felt like that was I don't I just felt like that was slightly misleading because it wasn't what their plan is for how
Yeah.
many trucks they have. It was what they would currently have with their current customers, which he didn't tell us the number.
Right. Yeah. The other thing that I thought was really striking about this application is they didn't have any feedback from Orange County yet. They had forwarded the plans to Orange County, so they still have to get the planning department to respond on those. They also didn't have any feedback from local fire departments or from Orange County Hazmat. And it sounds like they may have reached out to fire department. They haven't heard anything back yet. I think they're gonna
Right.
reach out. The other thing is that the DOT, because 84 is right there, had called and inquired about this project, and I think it's because the residents who live on that road had reached out to the DOT also, just as due diligence.
Although I think I think it was both ways.
Yeah.
I think that we heard from the planning board. Someone said the planning board did reach out to
Yeah.
the DOT, and also from a
Right.
resident reached out to the DOT.
So there's just a lot of open questions. A
Yeah.
lot of open questions.
Yeah, I think that this just is not a great location for this propane storage.
Concur. All right. We're 10 minutes.
We did 10 minutes.
Yeah.
We're already done.
No, we still have to talk about.
I know, but we have one more
Yes.
topic. But we still.
I know, we're done. 10 minutes.
We should finish this though.
Yeah, we should.
Maybe
We're
15.
yeah.
It's a good topic.
Mhm.
Okay, you go.
So the last public hearing on the agenda, and then we actually stepped out to speak to some folks, so we didn't hear the very last bit of the meeting, was for the UNFI, UNFI. They had come before. There was a public hearing at the last meeting, and the applicants were not there. They needed some more time to respond to all of the questions that came up in the last public hearing. But there were some folks, again, it's at the end of Beaver Dam Road, right on Neely Town. So there were some folks that were there, and they reported back to the planning board that not only at the last meeting there was this issue with the trucks lining up on Neely Town Road, parking overnight. It's a no parking zone. So some of the folks that live right next to the warehouse reported back that not only is that still happening, but also there's refrigerator trucks, reefer trucks that are parking on the backside of the building where they're not supposed to be parked, and they're running all night long. So they're hearing backup beepers from the yard trucks, like that are jockeying those things into place. Those are supposed to be shushers, which is a much quieter kind of backup safety mechanism. And they're running in a place that they're never supposed to be. And what I thought was really interesting is that the chair said that they're really glad that this subject got brought up. And it just speaks a lot to the fact that, the planning board puts together these pretty robust approvals for these warehouses within the zoning code, within the town's laws. They put special conditions on to protect their neighbors of these buildings that are built, and nothing really seems to go the way it was planned for.
Yeah. So I had written a question down, and as I was writing it down, Karina then asked a question to the planning board. So we were all asking the same question, which is, do we have enough code enforcement in this town for these projects? This came up a few times in this meeting tonight. It was brought up in the public comment session about site plans and some changes that were happening on the Amazon site. And also just having the discussion from UNFI, it seemed like the planning board was having to do enforcement as part of these public hearings for their expansion, but the planning board are not enforcement.
No.
So who is enforcement?
So we have a commercial inspector, code enforcement officer. That's our consultant Jim Farr, the town's consultant Jim Farr, and then there's a residential enforcement officer, which is a different kind of role. There's one
for all of the warehouses and all
right.
of the commercial. There's one
all of the new construction, all of the crews that are going around building things. He has to check in on all of that.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
And I think he's also being asked to make slight site plan modifications on the go. If it's just this one guy, and I don't know if he's got any colleagues that he's bringing in, to support the town. He did say when he first took on the role, or just shortly before when he was getting engaged as a temporary, code enforcement officer, that I think he had said 2.5 there was a need for at least 2.5 code enforcement officers or officials.
I believe it.
Yeah.
I absolutely
Yeah.
believe it. I think that it seems really hard for the planning board to have to listen to some of these problems that they were the ones who set the standards, but then to have the standards not be met and they are not the enforcement officers is probably very frustrating for them. And I know it's very frustrating for the residents as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Anything else?
Time check. 15 minutes.
All right, 15 minutes.
On the nose.
5. All right, have a good night, everybody.
Bye.
Are we still on?
Should we start singing?
I don't know that song. I know like toddler songs.